David, tell me where you'd like to start today.
Well, I just listened to the Prime Minister's short press conference, and it was very interesting because he did not walk back his original statement of Saturday, but he basically confirmed what we've been talking about. We discussed it a bit yesterday on the show, is that we have to take the world as it is. And Canada was not part in any planning of this, is not part of this at all. During the operation, is not necessarily privy to any of the reasoning that was behind it. And so we just have to stand with the fact that Canada sees Iran as the number one, and that's what he said. He reiterated what we all knew. Iran is the number one exporter of terrorism around the world, has been the number one exporter of terrorism for decades, has killed Canadians, has killed thousands of people around the world in attacks, killed its own citizens, has also killed women, specifically the treatment of women. He mentioned that as well. And so he was asked, well, do you think this is a war of choice, a war of necessity? He said, look, this is not my call. This is not my decision. And so I was not in the room. I'm not there to comment. I'm just saying I'm taking the world as it is. And so I think he's making it very clear. And he said, look, this is not a contradiction with Davos. Because some reporters and some people here in Quebec and the rest of the country are trying to say, well, this is a contradiction for the great speech in Davos. It wasn't. Because what he's saying very clearly is that, look, yes, there is a rupture in the world order. There is a rupture in international law and the world institutions like the United Nations. But the fact is that we have to take this very pragmatically. And that's what he's doing. And also, I get the feeling also, Aaron, was he purposely avoiding the media on this, etc.? I think so, to at least try to preserve a little bit of thunder for what is so far a very successful international trade mission. Yeah. I mean, if he had come out every day since Saturday, would we have talked as much of the major deals that he has concluded in India? Remember, this relationship was completely destroyed 2 years ago. And so, yes, there are still some lingering questions about India's involvement in Canada, but okay, they're fair. But the fact is that India is one of the major economies of the world, and if we're only going to do business with people who are virtuous and perfect, we're going to be pretty much alone. Yeah. And so, so the fact that he was not talking to media, I think, because he knew he had a vast series of announcements of deals with India, which are going to benefit directly Quebec, not only the rest of Canada, but Quebec. I mean, there's most notably a deal with McGill and other major industries that are in Quebec, and so that's important. And now he's in Australia. We're talking about no major announcement yet, but I think we're talking about a major critical minerals deal that's in the works, and maybe other major announcements, and then Japan. So I think that explains why maybe he hasn't been talking to media that much as well.
I will point out one thing, and I think Annie Bergeron-Oliver noted this, right? I didn't know this, but during the entire term of Justin Trudeau as Prime Minister, he never, ever once visited Australia. Now, Australia's been an ally for quite some time. I found that a bit odd.
It is odd, and especially since the Pacific Rim is such an important region geopolitically, but economically for Canada. That is very surprising, and especially that we have Australian interests here in Canada. I mean, that are exploiting our natural resources. Yeah. Major Australian companies that are here in Quebec, amongst other provinces. And so it is very surprising, and Australia can be a major economic partner with Canada as Mark Carney is trying to diversify our trade partnerships.
So let's talk just very quickly, and I think I have some audio coming up later as well. Donald Trump today in the Oval Office, I think he had Mark Rutte there at the head of NATO. Questions about what's going on in Iran, and I think the one that maybe surprised most people the most, when he was asked about, and we talked about this yesterday, this idea of regime change, and he actually said, well, we got to hope. He used the word hope, that the next guy or the next guys are better than the ones we had, but you know what, you never know. And then he said something about, well, two of the people they thought might succeed were actually killed in the bombing. So what's going on here, David?
Well, again, this is the confirmation, that, Donald Trump, plunges into things without, necessarily thinking everything out. And this wouldn't be the first time. I mean, yesterday you were mentioning, drawing, some sort of parallels with the operation in Venezuela. Have we heard anything about any type of transition in the regime over there since taking out Maduro? No. Has anything really changed in terms of oil production? Certain countries are getting less Venezuelan oil than they did before, some bad actors. But, as we know, the U.S. companies have said this Venezuela is uninvestable, even now. So it doesn't surprise me and that there doesn't seem to be any plans. And Iran right now is actually trying. Obviously, they have a plan. They were prepared for this. The latest, you probably saw this, I think it's in the last hour or two. I mean, the U.S. consulate in Dubai was just hit.
Yeah.
And so, but at the same time, countries that seem to be on the fence on Saturday, we were talking about Saturday, Carney being alone and, France and the UK, Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron being sort of cautious. Well, what they do in the past few hours, Macron just addressed the French nation live on TV and announced that he's sending an aircraft carrier in the Mediterranean, sending fighter jets directly into the region, anti-aircraft systems to French allies in the region. And same thing for Keir Starmer. He's sending a warship group near Cyprus. So something is definitely happening. But back to your original point about Donald Trump. I mean, now maybe a few weeks, maybe not. We'll take out. We'll see. No, this is total improvisation. That I'll grant you.
All right. Before we run out of time, I talked a bunch about this whole OQLF idea here.
Oh, my goodness.
Sending out undercover agents, if you will, all right? To
go to shoppers.
to go to thousands of stores. They're going to make over 14,000 visits. And, it's not a matter of the money. It's a lot of money. It's $350,000, but in a budget of $49 million, it doesn't represent much. But just this idea, David, and the thing that really stood out to me, we've done these in the past. I know they've been happening since the late 80s. Typically, they're 5 or 6 years apart. This one is basically 3 years, barely 3 years since the last one. It kind of begs the question, what's going on here? What is some kind of language emergency happening, or is there a political motive here as far as you
Well, this is totally a political motive. There's no language emergency. There's no data. There hasn't been any data to support this language crackdown over the past few years. Remember against McGill, Concordia, Jean-François Rabel saying, I hear more English than ever in Montreal. Okay, where's your data? Where are your facts? None. Same thing with Pascal Derry, the higher education minister. Where's your data? None. So this is pure politics. What I will say on this, Aaron, is that, what's going to happen, and I'm sure we're going to have another or a series of other go moments that are going to hurt, yet again, Quebec's attractiveness for investment, more red tape for these poor shop owners that are going to have to deal with the consequences of this. So I hope that, and I know it's not an easy thing to suggest, but what I do hope is that what we have to respond to this is the power of our wallets, of our purses, and say, you know what? These stores, if they are targeted, and there's these ridiculous attacks, the best way to fight this is actually and hopefully these stores will come out and say, this happened to me, and say, okay, we will go and shop more in these stores to help them and support them. And but I think we have to mobilize and say, because there is a way to fight this. Yes, there are the courts, but it's expensive. It takes time. But the thing is that I think the idea is, no, we will respond. and we'll respond the best way that we can with our economic power that we have. And finally, I mean, again, yet another example, because these moves, when people are looking to invest in Quebec, when you have people like you've had him on your podcast, Andrew Lutsey coming on and saying there's so much red tape. The Quebec government, the regulatory obstacles to development are hurting Quebec's economy. This is yet another example.
We will leave it at that. David, thank you so much. Have a good week.
I'm Luke Wilson. Join me each week for Film Never Lies. Since retiring from the NFL, I've had a lot on my mind, and now I've got my own show. So if you're tired of lazy takes, if you want honest conversations, join us each week. Film Never Lies, available on all TSN platforms and the iHeartRadio app.